Okay, good morning everyone. My name's Sue Beckingham and I'm a senior lecturer at Sheffield Hallam University and an educational developer. So my short talk this morning is going to be about social media for teaching and learning. This is something that's very dear to my heart and has certainly been a big part of my own professional development. So I use a lot of different types of social media to find out information, but importantly to build my own personal learning network and communities of practice where like-minded educators are sharing their tips and tricks relating to learning and teaching. So this talk is going to focus partially on our own CPD and how we can use social media for our own learning, but it will also look at how we can use this and how I've personally used this and colleagues have used it in teaching our own students. So to help us explore the use of social media, which is obviously vast, we're going to use the 5C framework that was created with a colleague of mine, Christian Naranci, and myself. So this framework looks through a lens of the 5Cs, which is how we use social media to communicate, how we use it to connect with others, how we use it to curate information, collaborate with others, and to also create resources and indeed be creative with an overarching critical viewpoint, looking at each of these particular dancers. So to start with, if we think about social media, if we continue in the old ways, this adage, it won't open new doors. So actually looking at new ways that we can make connections can be very, very useful. And for me, social media has been a catalyst of doing that. So I can actually make connections beyond my own subject group within the university, beyond the institution. And this can take you actually to meeting other like-minded educators beyond the people that you actually know. So this gives you an international wide scope. So professional network that most people are aware of now is LinkedIn, which is always a good starting place. But there are all sorts of other tools that we can use to explore making new connections in different spaces, to have conversations of different natures. So one of my favourites, I have to say, is Twitter. And this has given me the opportunity to build a global network. So I'm in touch. So this is a visualization of my connections on Twitter. And as you can see, they're all over the world, across America, as far away as Australia, New Zealand. And through Twitter, I've been able to follow what other people are doing, their work, but then increasingly as my confidence developed, I started to share my own work. And this is how you build a network. One key thing I would say is having a clear bio. So biography on the Twitter, you're allowed about 160 characters to say who you are and what your interests are, and also a couple of links that you can put to your own blog, your own website, or whatever you think might be useful. That's really important for people to make connections with you because they want to know who you are and what your interests are, so that if those interests are shared, they're more likely to follow you and you can build those connections even further. For an example for the communicate out of the 5Cs, one thing I would recommend is the weekly LTHE chat. So that stands for Learning, Teaching and Higher Education. This is a chat that takes place every Wednesday at 8 o'clock. There's a different theme each week, and guests will come up with 6 questions that are posted over an hour, and people engage in conversations, ask questions, learn, share useful links, during the space of that chat. So that's something useful to have a look at. Follow at LTHE Chat, and you can find out more about it. So another way to communicate, and this is bringing in some examples with students. So on the left, this is an example from a couple of years ago, actually, before we had the use of things like Blackboard Collaborate, where we use Google Plus Hangouts. The example here is a colleague who taught postgraduate students distance learning, and he was finding it quite difficult to get them to interact with the VLE tools within there. So we experimented with this, contacted the students and said, if it doesn't work, we'll go back to the traditional methods. But they absolutely loved it. So comments that came out of that were things like, I no longer feel alone, because they could actually talk to each other, and that kind of built those relationships. The visual cues is quite important when we're talking to each other, and that was apparent, obviously being able to see each other. Being able to see our tutor and peers was great. Another comment that came out of that. The example on the right hand side of the screen is where students have been encouraged to have group conversations online. So this was part of a module where they had to have team meetings. So yes, they met face to face, and they gathered all the information using a shared Google document. So they kept notes of their meetings. But what we did here was introduce them to either Google Hangouts, or they could use group Skype. So on top of that, the students used a tool called Screencast-O-Matic, which is free for 15 minutes. Literally, it records what's on your screen. And this gave the opportunity for the students not only to use Skype or Google Hangouts to have a meeting, but capturing it using the screencasting software allowed them to revisit that, and they actually embedded this into a blog, so they could then reflect on their participation in that conversation. So there was lots of learning that came out of that. Going on to the curation theme, there are many tools now where you can curate and gather useful resources. Now, people do this in different ways. I used to laboriously capture things, download them as PDFs, put them into a folder on my computer, etc. But what we've got now are tools that can actually help us look at things a little bit more visually. And the added bonus is that A, you can access it on any device because it's in the cloud, and B, you can share it with other people. So you can look at what they're curating. You can also share what you're curating. So Pinterest is a nice example where images can be simply pinned. So you get a little applet on your screen, click that and it saves the image, and it also keeps a link to where you found that particular article that's got the image in. So that could be websites, it could be a book list, it could be infographics, etc. Scoop, quite similar, but you just put the URL into the search bar, press go, and that automatically pulls forward the title of whatever it is that you're wanting to save. And if there's any images on that, it will save that as well. So this particular example is articles, videos, all sorts of different things I found around the topic of MOOCs, massive open online courses. And there's a nice few examples at the top of the screen there. Going on to collaborating and sharing, obviously it's quite important for our students to work together and working in groups, having some spaces where they can actually collaborate and share information. So these are examples from a colleague, Julie Gillen, who's teaches journalism, and she's used a nice tool called Animoto. So here the students are curating images and adding some text narrative alongside those images, and then they can play as a short animated video. Again, students really enjoy this. It's a different approach rather than saying, go and collaborate and write, a 500 word piece of writing. So actually having the visuals in there is making it more interesting, and it's just a nice different approach that they can adopt. Another example here is where the students are creating things themselves. So they're creating useful resources or contributing to resources. An example here is on the left is Padlets. These are all free tools, by the way. And here you just double click on the screen, bring up a text box, you can add images, you can add videos, and multiple people can contribute to that. You simply set it up and share the link with the students, or they can create it themselves, and the group of students can contribute to that. The tool on the right is called Answer Garden, and this is a very nice simple one where you can get feedback from students and you ask them to come up with one word that describes their feelings at that time, for example. So this then shows as a word cloud. The more people use the word, the bigger it gets. So this example here was an employability event. Students and alumni were invited to this. They talked about their experiences. The current students could ask some questions, and these are the words that they came up with at the end of it. So encouraging and inspiring were very popular, but it gives you a nice feel of what's actually happening. So all of these give students the opportunity to experiment in digital spaces, and one of the things that we need to do is to encourage them to learn how they can act appropriately in these spaces. A good model at looking at building digital capabilities, if you've not seen it already, is from JISC. So if you just search for that, you'll find that quite easily, and you can look in more detail about how that's being used. So one thing I feel is quite important is the question of, why do educators need to use social media and other tools? Well, it helps them to build a professional online presence. It's an opportunity to share your scholarly activity, your good practice and everything related to learning and teaching. It gives you an opportunity to learn from others, but also you're a role model to other students, and students themselves benefit from building their own online presence because this is something that prospective employers could actually see. One of the things that we found though is that students still need some guidance. So these are freely available. They have a Creative Commons license, and you can get these different leaflets from go.shu.ac.uk/social media. You can download them, you can change them, rebrand them. They've got a Creative Commons license. It would be fantastic if you could share how you're using them yourselves. But these are nice conversation starters to talk with the students about using social media responsibly, how they can use that in learning and teaching, how they can manage their own digital footprint, and also how they can use social media to enhance their employability skills. So do feel free to use them. And as part of that conversation, let the students share their good experiences and examples perhaps of things that haven't gone so well or they've seen have not gone so well. So this idea of don't just do social, be sincere, be open, be collaborative, interesting, authentic and likeable is a really useful conversation to have with your students going forward. So I hope that was useful. That slide here is just a summary of what I hope to get across. And if you have any questions and want to discuss this further online, this is how you can contact me. So on Twitter, I'm at Sue Becks, just to shorten things down. And you can also find me on LinkedIn, and I guess a variety of other places. I have a blog called socialmediaforlearning.com and share lots of resources there. So I'd love to hear your feedback. Thank you for listening. Do you have any questions? Okay, we'll try and bring you in via the microphone, Andy. So we've got one question coming up.
Hi there.
Hi,
We
Andy.
might get a bit of feedback. Hi, Sue. Thank you very much for running the session. It was fantastic, and it all works very well here. It's just very noisy, so apologies if you've got any echo or background
Oh,
noise.
that's no problem.
And also apologies if you've already covered this in the session. I wondered if you'd already identified any sort of upcoming apps or social media platforms that you think are ones to keep an eye on and stuff to watch out for.
The current one that I'm still deliberating with and know that I've got to explore is Snapchat. So this is a very popular app at the moment, as used by people of all ages, younger ages that is, predominantly. So
Yes.
I'm still a little bit confused with it, but Eric Stoller, who's another great educator and expert in social media, has been looking at this. So I guess I need to look a little bit more closely how we could use that. There's always a fear of jumping into the space of the social, and I'm always mindful of that, which is why I've always kind of steered a little bit clear of Facebook personally. But there's great examples of that being used effectively.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely understand. It's kind of when you see these big advances in mobile technology taking off and lots of people are using them sort of recreationally or in personal lives or just for entertainment or whatever it is, you can see the possibilities to reach people, and it's just figuring out how and when and where it's appropriate to do that in the educational context, I guess. And I completely get what you're saying about Snapchat, because it's such a strange beast as well, with it being something that's very the content disappears, it doesn't persist, and we're so used to in education having things. We want to record everything all the time. We want to record
Yeah.
lectures. We want to record stuff for people to access later on. So I guess that's kind of why it's a bit of a mystery as to how we go about using it and things like it.
Absolutely, yeah. Another tool that's quite useful, which isn't sort of brand new, but Periscope, which is a live streaming app that you can sort of connect with Twitter. So you can take an opportunity to periscope something going on, and that would be actually very useful to showcase some practical activities that are going on in the here and now. So you're just recording it live, and then that can be tweeted out,
Yeah.
so that other people can see that. There is that kind of, you have to get beyond the polished and the perfect. So saying I'm here now, this is happening. It can be absolutely fascinating, and I've had the opportunity to tune into um, people from all over the world, that are experimenting with this.
Excellent. Thank you. That's great.
Any more questions?
So Sue, if you want to just press the end current button, that'll take the camera away from me, and everyone will stop hearing.
Okay, well, if there is no further questions at the moment, as I said, do contact us. Okay. We'll pop out into the gallery, so if there's anybody wants to have a chat in there, I'll be there for a short while. And thank you very much for listening once again. I hope you have a fantastic conference.